Most artists keep ruining their portraits by making the same 3 big mistakes without even realizing it. I know because I recently asked hundreds of artists to show me their work and I saw them nearly every time. So in this video, I'll break down 3 real-world examples and show you some simple tricks to spot these mistakes in your portraits and fix them for good. Our first submission comes from Toby, who's made a mistake so common and easy to make, you'll even see examples in galleries and museums. Here is a painting of St. Joseph by a follower of Giuseppe de Ribera, and the original by Ribera himself. If we compare the eyes, Ribera's are parallel with the other features, while his follower's eye drifts down towards the right. This happens all the time, even to experienced painters. So how do you avoid it? There are 2 key things you need to check that will make this mistake really easy to spot. The first is more well known, but the second is something almost nobody talks about. You may have already seen diagrams like this Loomis head, mapping out the proportions of the human head. Here I'm placing a vertical centre line that runs down the middle of the face, through the bridge of the nose and the centre of the mouth. I'm then placing a horizontal centre line about halfway down to indicate the eyes. Dividing the head into thirds will give me the brow and the bottom of the nose. Notice how these lines are parallel with each other. Faces aren't perfectly symmetrical, but the main features should all be aligned with each other. But when I look at Toby's portrait, the right eye and eyebrow are slanting down to the right. Whenever I start a portrait, I always check these reference lines to make sure the features are aligned correctly. This mistake is so easy to make when you're working from life because your model will never sit perfectly still. You'll place one eye, then when you paint the other eye, they'll have moved slightly. The only way to avoid this is to establish the alignment of the features at the start while you're blocking in the larger shapes. Then, when you add the details, stick to the angle you established with your blocking instead of chasing the model. But even when your eyes are aligned correctly, there are other ways they can be off. The eyes can be too far apart, too close together, or one eye can be bigger than the other. So how do you avoid these mistakes? That's where the second, less well-known trick comes in. Look for the small shape in between the eyebrows just above the bridge of the nose. Portrait artists sometimes call this the keystone area, after the wedge-shaped stone at the top of a Roman arch. Just like it holds the arch together, the keystone anchors everything in your portrait. If your keystone is too wide or too narrow, it's a strong indicator that something is wrong with the eyes. Once I've blocked in my subject, my next step is always to make sure the keystone has been placed accurately. From the keystone, I'll then work outwards towards the inside corners of the eyes, then the whites of the eyes and the irises, comparing each short distance in turn. We often find it much easier to spot mistakes with smaller shapes. You'll quickly spot if any of these small shapes are wrong. The inside corners of the eyes are an essential landmark because they also help you identify the next really common portrait painting mistake. Our next submission is from Thomasina. This is a very well painted portrait and the features are nicely aligned, but can you see what's wrong with the nose? It's too short. You'll see this mistake everywhere with noses that are either too long or too short. So how can you check? If we go back to the basic head proportions, the nose is usually about halfway down between the brow and the jaw, but this can vary between individuals. Fortunately, there are some really easy to spot landmarks, just like the keystone area, that once you know what you're looking for, will immediately show you if something is wrong with the nose. Just below the inside corner of the eye, you'll find the infraorbital fold, and below that the nasolabial fold. This is the crease that runs from the side of the nose down towards the corner of the mouth. Always remember to check the short distance between these 2 folds. If it's too tall or too short, your nose is definitely wrong. This isn't the only shape that will help you determine the length of the nose. If you divide the area below the nose into 3 for the area just above the upper lip, the whole mouth area including both lips and the shadow below the lower lip, then finally the chin, you need to make sure there's enough room for all 3. If not, something will need adjusting. The easiest to spot is usually the area above the upper lip, as this often forms a clear geometric shape. In Thomasina's portrait, the chin looks a bit too large. There's another issue too. The top of the right ear is too low. Remember, the ears also need to be aligned with the other features. But there's one more mistake that can ruin your portrait even if your drawing is perfect. Let's look at that next. In this portrait by Thomas, the face is great, but my eye is immediately pulled to this light shape within the shadow on the neck. It's much too light, and it overemphasizes the tendons in her neck, which is distracting. I'm going to darken this area and I'm softening the edge of the shadow. Do you see the improvement? This is a classic mistake. After incorrect drawing, over-exaggerating subtle differences in tone is the most serious mistake you can make when painting. It will completely destroy the realism of your work. It's also the hardest mistake to avoid. We're hardwired to focus on details, so we immediately zoom into our subject like a microscope, moving from one tiny piece of information to the next. But if you only compare small details with the colours around them, you will always exaggerate the differences in tone. To avoid this mistake, you need to establish the larger value relationships of the whole painting. You do this by simplifying your subject into just 3 or 4 main light and dark tones, like shadows, lights, and a midtone. Then, whenever you spot a subtle shift, like slightly lighter notes in the shadows, remember to compare them with all the other main tones, not just the colour next to it. Mastering this is probably the single most important skill in realistic painting. If you want a simple tool that will make this much easier, watch this video next, and simplifying tonal values will become second nature.